This is Local 3 News at 10.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us for Local 3 News. I'm Brianna McLean. New tonight, we're looking ahead to next week's May election. Normally a quiet affair concerned with school funding and millages for small townships, many citizens in Delta County are ready to cast a ballot months in the making. Last July, a group of concerned activists going by the name Delta County Citizens for Ethical Leadership filed recall petitions against County Board of Commissioners Chair David Moyle and Commissioners Bob Barron and Peterson. By the end of the year, enough signatures had been filed to greenlight an election, and 3 challengers had stepped up against them. In the years since the recall efforts began, activists now have many more complaints than the original incident that kicked everything off. And for the uninitiated, it may feel impossible to make heads or tails of the situation, but Local 3's Skylar Perkins helps to explain by doing a deep dive into the division in Delta County.
An effort to recall 3 commissioners in Delta County is about to be put to the test over a year after an event that spurred thousands to sign petitions saying they wanted to put the commissioners' jobs back up for a vote. And if you were to describe commission meetings since then in a word, it probably wouldn't be quiet.
Shame. Shame.
The prosecutor does not work for this board.
And then he sat down in his chair and pointed to his crotch.
Okay, did you ask for the map? No, I did not.
You're out of order.
Of course, that depends on who you ask.
You are out of control.
Listen, I haven't heard anyone out of control right now.
And while the order of meetings has been hotly debated, you'd be hard-pressed to find someone to tell you they've been free from controversy.
Diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Critical race theory.
Eugenics.
Safe haven for queer people.
Constitutional republic.
And I will always give respect to someone with a disability.
But then the next day, we open the paper, and there's a letter to the editor that said it was a setup. And I do not appreciate being called a liar.
So much so, it was the first thing mentioned in the Daily Press newspaper's year in review. Now, over a year later, if you were to ask someone why Board Chair Dave Moyle and Commissioners Bob Barron and Peterson are up for recall, you'll likely hear a few reasons.
And it did start with a handshake.
Yes, we did hire Attorney Scott Graham.
Airport situation.
As far as Mr. Mattson goes,
How they disseminate their money.
The 3 of you fired Emily for personal reasons.
And while voters on May 7th may be motivated by any number of issues, that last one is what officially started the recall process.
The straw that broke the camel's back, as they say, it was that moment when the board fired Emily Salvo.
But why were so many people fired up about someone losing their job? And again, it depends on who you ask.
Unfortunately, she was trying to inform the community of some wrongdoing that she felt that was happening through the conservation district.
She already had an agenda.
Disgruntled, insubordinate employee.
If you were an employer and an employee of yours come out in a public forum and said all those things about you,
The only recourse for that is immediate removal.
Which begs the question, what could she have said that was so bad? Lucky for us, a broken live stream of the meeting still caught the audio, and we can get a brief look in the room through body camera footage from an officer who was there. First, here's what we know about that night. On February 7th, then Administrator Emily DeSalvo stood before a packed boardroom 2 hours into a normal commission meeting. Talk of her contract was the last item on the agenda. While the commissioners under recall might tell you the packed house was a setup, others have told us that it was due to the 3 voting to relax ethics rules in the previous meeting. Here's part of what she had to say.
I'm educated, I am qualified, and I'm experienced enough to understand my role as administrator. I have also been undermined, ignored, and disrespected, and now have endured personal attacks on my character by Mr. Rory Mattson, the CEO of the Delta Conservation District. During my time in this position, I have received several emails from sitting commissioners or sat in meetings with commissioners in which I was told not to voice my concerns for the county, not to engage in information finding, and not to perform duties within my job description. I am concerned this board is more concerned about their political capital or personal gain than serving the county. The board's recent elimination of the ethics committee supports this concern.
DeSalvo also implied she suspected that she wasn't long for her job with the county.
I have had to hear from people in the public that commissioners are having discussions regarding my position and suggesting a replacement. I have had Commissioner Peterson request a copy of my contract, ask if my position was part of a union, and then when I directly questioned him about these inquiries, his response was that he had been thinking what would happen to the county if I got hit by a car.
And as accusations go, it depends on who you believe.
I believe that she was bringing forth something that was truly unethical and wrong, and to cover it up, they decided that they should fire her.
The county board and the county administrator could have handled their differences, whatever they were, privately, discussing things. But when you put things in public and you give somebody an ultimatum by calling him unprofessional and a liar and unethical, you force that person's hand. Emily DeSalvo fired herself.
And still ahead tonight on Local 3 News, Audrey Pentecost's full forecast is coming up later in the show. But first, stick with us. After a short break, we'll tell you what a complete takeover of Delta County's Conservation District and an investigation from the Attorney General has to do with the firing of the county's administrator.
You're watching Local 3 News with Brianna McClain.
And you give somebody an ultimatum by calling him unprofessional and a liar and unethical, you force that person's hand. Emily DeSalvo fired herself.
In the last year, one thread of the plot that may have been lost by some could look on the surface like a minor affair.
When Mr. Mattson stood up here 3 weeks ago and pulled out the contract on behalf of the district, I was told publicly by several commissioners that we needed to get moving on where the county goes from here and taking back the parks, and we needed to act quickly. Following that very public directive, I started gathering information on financials, grants, procedures to allow the board to have all the information I could find so that they can make a decision moving forward. In the next few days, I received 2 emails, one from Commissioner Barron and one from Commissioner Peterson, telling me that I was being presumptuous and to cease anything I was doing regarding the parks. I found this directive odd, as it was counter to the public directive I had been given only days earlier.
The county's conservation district has become a hot topic again due to the board's decision to file a complaint with MDARD against the new board chair.
I had an internal conversation with our staff about what happens if we do something that's inconsistent with the, not agreements, but with the management plans. And somehow that made it from my lips to Commissioner Barron's ears. And he interpreted that as a breach of confidentiality. It wasn't my breach of confidentiality, it was his.
However, Commissioner Peterson also told us the district was a factor in his vote to fire DeSalvo.
Earlier in that meeting, I had questioned her about a $42,000 bill that was supposed to be paid to the Conservation District that she hadn't paid. And she had told me that she sent emails over, questions over that had to be answered before she could pay them. And so I questioned her about that, and she said, I'm sitting on the emails, I didn't pay it, and the previous board told me I had to pay the bill, but never said when I had to pay it.
And back to our old refrain, even this is up for debate.
What I understand from it, from my opinion, is that there was a check that was supposed to be written to the county parks or the conservation district. They were not providing receipts, and Emily was saying that she would not cut a check until those receipts were received into the county offices, which makes complete sense to me, because I'm not writing a check for anything until I know what I'm paying for also.
We have since reached out to DeSalvo with no response, but the current chair of the Conservation District says it has about $1 million in the bank. So we've got another question. Isn't it reasonable for the administrator to look over a few receipts before cutting a $40,000 check? Looking back in the archives of the Daily Press, reports of controversy over the Conservation District go back at least as far as 2019, when Ed Fleury was circulating a petition to remove its CEO from his position. Before we get too far, let's talk about what the Conservation District is set up for.
So the Conservation Districts give technical assistance to private landowners. So if a farmer has agricultural practices that may impede on other laws, you're inviting basically a government agent, that represents the state of Michigan, onto your private property to have a look around. They're going to say, oh, wow, you got those cows in the creek. That's going to cause erosion downstream and, nutrients and invasive species. So let's start working on fixing that problem and addressing that issue. And we have resources and technical assistance to help you. And the landowner goes, well, okay, how much is this going to cost me? And they're going to go, it's all free. It's like, no way.
Now, back in 2019, the Daily Press reported that Fleury accused its then CEO, Rory Mattson, of fraud, misusing equipment, and even withholding from the sheriff keys to the county forest. It wouldn't be until the end of last year that Mattson would leave the district of his own accord, and just months later, some of Fleury's accusations would be found plausible in a civil investigation by the Attorney General. See, Mattson's exit coincides with an all-new board taking over the Conservation District, led by Joe Kaplan. He says he didn't spend anything on his campaign, just told people one of his biggest priorities was transparency, something that if you read reports in the Daily Press, has been a complaint about Mattson and the district for half a decade.
So one of the issues on the table is, Mr. Mattson took some pretty substantial sized bonuses out of the parks funds into the district funds and then paid himself bonuses. Well, that went against the terms of the contract. And often he didn't disclose this in a really transparent manner to his board. Everything with Mattson is vague. And that's what Emily was getting focused on. And that's what she was questioning. Rory, I want to see this. Rory, I want to see that. I want to see your general ledger. I want to see your meeting minutes. And Rory would cry foul to his commissioners, Bob Barron and Dave Moyle, and say, we're being singled out. I mean, it's the same nonsense.
Now, Local 3 hasn't verified those claims, but through a FOIA request, we have discovered a recent letter from the Michigan Attorney General's office about an investigation into Mattson's actions with the district. The letter is dated mid-March, in which the Assistant Attorney General wrote to the chair of the Conservation District, informing him of what MDARD believed to be a long history of potential violations of the law for acting as a private consultant and expert witness. The letter also raised concerns about financial management and record-keeping practices at the district, and said many of the errors were done in full view of the district's board. As a result, the AG's office said the Conservation District could be liable to return up to $400,000 of grant money awarded since 2016. Now, with the Conservation District's all-new leadership, the Assistant AG's office said they likely won't ask for any of the money back, in return for a list of concrete assurances that any alleged violations of the law won't be repeated. It is important to note that no criminal allegations have been made by prosecutors, and Kaplan himself lauded Mattson for his legacy improving the parks when he stepped down. Back on the subject of the recall, it seems the relationship between the commissioners and Salvo has gone far past her last day with the board. Before serving as administrator, Salvo was a go-to employee in the county courts. After her firing, the current, overwhelmed court staff hoped she could lend her rare expertise to help them get their heads above water. All they had to do was get the green light from the county commission.
We have deadlines. We have this GIS conversion going on. Sam's doing 2 jobs at once. It's too much. And Emily makes the most sense because she knows the job,
I know you said you need her as soon as possible, but this is kind of a conundrum for me.
I would take a motion to table this.
I'll support the motion.
All right.
So in the meantime, we just keep working 14, 16-hour days.
All right. Any further discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
All right, motion passes.
So at least for now, voters in Delta County are left with at least a few more questions than answers.
There appears to be some people that are angry in Delta County. I'm referring to rhinos, liberals, and socialists. I've added to that group. Well, I'm here to tell you that the business of the county is still conducting itself. The board is still doing the business of the people, and we are still open for business. Delta County is a great place to live. It's a good place to work, and I believe in what we are doing.
Commissioner Barron moves to effectively immediately terminate Administrator DeSalvo's contract and employment. And is that your understanding of the support you're lending?
Correct.
Discussion, gentlemen. Mr. Melner?
I don't know where this board is headed, but it looks like it's going down the tubes. I am just words can't describe it. And I think it's wrong. Deadbeat wrong. I don't know what you're thinking.
All right, I would like a roll call on this.
Milner,
No.
View,
No.
Barron,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
and Moyle.
Yes.
In Escanaba, Skylar Perkins, Local 3.
Deputy, you want to clear the room, please, if people cannot control themselves? All right, I would need Emily's keys tonight.
There'll be somebody in the office within tomorrow morning when you get the.
A lot of people like me believing that Mr. Barron, Mr. Peterson, and Mr. Moyle are recalled unfairly. And yeah, you can smile, but I'm calling everybody to be not emotional. Just see what is the truth, why they were recalled, and read more and watch the videos and see how they are working. And I'm calling Delta County conservative and constitutional people to vote on May 7th in their regular poll places, election polls, and tell each other to go and vote. Doesn't matter what is your choice or you want to vote for, but everybody should get up and go to the polls. This is our responsibility and job. We have to do that.